I will say again, good morning. Welcome to the V3 implementation call today, July 26, 2023. We are very pleased to have you with us. We know it's an hour or up to an hour and a half out of your day, twice a month. And we really do appreciate the participation that we get. We feel like these meetings provide a good venue for discussion. Items come up that need more looking into, and this really just helps facilitate NEMSIS become, better every time. We would like to let you know that it is a little bit different on the communications. You are muted and kept off camera. If you do want to say anything, put it in the chat, raise your hand, let us know, and we will get to you as quickly as possible so you can ask your question and we can have a conversation that way. We do our best to keep these meetings secure. Also wanting to let everyone know these meetings are recorded. They are posted on the NEMSIS website and our YouTube channel. Please feel free to share, review as needed. It's a great place to send people if they want to know a little bit about what's going on with NEMSIS. We just like to make sure you know that it is being recorded. We do try and review all of the chat during the meeting. Sometimes there are messages that are missed, and we will review those during the debriefing. So let's go ahead and get started with our agenda. The first item is a stakeholder introduction that Monet is doing for us this week. Monet, if you want to go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, greetings everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me go ahead and share this screen. You should be able to see my screen. Is that correct, Jen? Or anyone?
Yes.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. Yes.
Okay, no worries. So the purpose of the stakeholder introductions is to have an opportunity to get to know each other. Let me go ahead and progress the next screen. So we're going to enhance our ability to get to know each other, build connections that lead to collaboration, and have a little bit of fun. So we asked the question of this stakeholder, what do you like to do to relax or unwind? And they responded, they like to go to the gym, reading books, listening to podcasts, and watching history and documentaries. We also asked something interesting about themselves. This person responded, when I was a teenager, I ventured into the world of entrepreneurship. One of my first jobs was running a small perfume business. I would purchase various perfumes and offer them for sale through installment plans. The next question is, what do you like best about your job? And they responded, what I enjoy most about my job is EMS data, is the incredible team I have the privilege of working with. They are not only intelligent and knowledgeable, but also incredibly supportive, which has greatly facilitated my learning process in the field of EMS. Are there any guesses? If you have a guess, are they still able to put it in the chat? Someone put something in the chat. Let's see here.
Let's see, we've got one that guessed Amber.
Karen guessed Amber. Okay, let's go ahead and show you this person. Luis Dominguez. Luis is from the state of Florida. He's, I think this is quality and control data manager from the Bureau of Emergency Medical Oversight, the Division of Emergency Preparedness and Community Support, again, from the state of Florida, Department of Health. Louise, are you on the call this morning? If he is, can someone unmute him, give him an opportunity to say hello?
I'm not seeing him, but let me search it. Yep, there he is. I will.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for your welcoming.
All right, Louise, we hope that we can see you soon, and maybe you'll be in Park City with us in August. Thank you so much for allowing us to share a little bit about yourself, and we hope that you have a fantastic day.
And I have some questions for you. So when we see each other in August, I got some questions.
Okay, yeah, I'll see you in August for sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, Janice, back to you.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is actually, we have a guest who is here with us. Chief Bruce Evans serves as the fire chief for the Upper Pine River Fire Protection District in Colorado. He has over 38 years of experience in EMS, and we invited him to the call today to share about his recent successful Safe Streets for All grant submission and action plan. So as a reminder, I need to say this, the SSFA grant cannot be applied for by states, but only by the local agencies and organizations. And we are so pleased that you can join us today. You are off mute and you should be able to share your screen if you would like.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Doesn't look like the video will start, but I'm just here to kind of give you guys a brief over of what happened with our application into the SS4 system. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so as in the introduction there, I'll also say that, I'm the former or the immediate past president for the National Association of EMTs. And I would tell you that in many of the roles that the president has to fill in at NEMT, one of those is definitely having an interaction with NHTSA. And at a meeting with GAM 4 years ago, we were talking about these SS4 grants coming down. And at that time, there was also some rulemaking that was going on. And as Safe Streets Grants has an area that they focus on called the post-crash care section, we were talking about things that could be incorporated into post-crash care that would be beneficial for EMS organizations, things like whole blood programs, things like battery-powered extrication equipment, which is, the secretary is, very enthusiastic about alternative power and trying to reduce your carbon footprint. And obviously, for those that have been in the field and operated gas-powered equipment and some of the power plants that power up extrication tools, we know that that also produces a little bit of a carbon footprint. So in those discussions with GAM and NHTSA, we submitted some formal questions. So that actually kind of put me on the trail following this SS4 grant in the National Highway Traffic Safety Plan. And as we watched this develop, the grants became available. And Jen, as you said, the grants are only available to local agencies, not to state agencies. And it was not a difficult application to put in. But I would tell you that a lot of our motivation to put in for this SS4 grant was that we wanted to get access to what was called phase 2 of the money. So phase 1 is really about writing a highway traffic safety plan for either your jurisdiction or a section of highway. And we selected a section of highway, US 160. And if you're familiar with the southwest part of Colorado, that is an extremely dangerous road. It ranks up there as number 3, I think, in the state highway fatality range. And that's not even including probably what we get off that highway with, crashes that don't result in a fatality. So we took the space from Wolf Creek to the Arizona state border, which is a fairly, over 100 miles of highway. And we partnered with all of the fire departments and EMS agencies that are along that route, again, with the focus that we're going after writing the plan so we can control the narrative for the implementation portion of the grant and focus on post-crash care. And for those of you that have been involved with highway traffic safety grants before, you know that Law enforcement typically goes after these things, or some other coalition. They do seatbelt stuff, or they do enforcement activities and enhanced enforcement activities. I think this is, my experience when I was in Nevada with highway safety grants there. We had highway safety grants by us extrication equipment. We had them by, back in the day when backboards were a thing. They bought us backboards, and they paid for things like, very large PR events that many of you might be familiar with, the event that's done with the high schools during graduation or right before graduation, where we stage a car wreck and then we stage a funeral. We do a mass gathering at the school, and that program has also been funded by highway traffic safety money in the past, in my past life when I was in Nevada. So I know there's, the folks that run these grants are sympathetic to what goes on with emergency medical services. So that kind of leads us to, we were awarded the grant about $200,000 just for phase one, and that is to write the highway traffic safety plan for the US 160 corridor. And as we get, we're just getting into the first week of that. I would tell you that we have also used some of the large language models, AKA ChatGPT, to meet some of the requirements on the grant. And I would just tell you that you still have to proofread that stuff, and you have to make sure that it's applicable to what is going on, but it's an incredible time saver. So for example, ChatGPT wrote our DEI statement, did a wonderful job, and did it in about 5 minutes. And, then when you get into asking ChatGPT about suggestions to reduce your carbon footprint, which are all supplementals that are required into the SS4 grant, ChatGPT did a fantastic job on that also. And again, it's not to say that you don't have to proofread that stuff and customize it a little bit, but at least it's a time saver for you, as everybody, I think, is struggling with, especially when you go out to look for technical writers in the EMS world. There's not a lot of them. There's a lot of what I call beltway bandits that are out there that like to espouse themselves as technical writers for you, but you usually spend more time trying to explain to them what EMS really does. And it's an incredible time waster to, where you could have just done it yourself in a quicker way. So we're starting this week with some community meetings and trying to focus the SS4. If you haven't been to the SS4 grant site and the webpage that NHTSA has up for that, it's a fantastic site. There's a nice little template. So even though you get awarded the grant, there's a template to follow to fill out what is in the grant deliverable. It was interesting when we were originally put in for the grant, we put in for an electric pickup truck, Ford Lightning. And we were originally awarded that vehicle. And, part of the whole, PR thing on that is as we go around to do these public meetings, we wanted to highlight, an alternative vehicle or alternative energy vehicle. And then we were notified that somebody disqualified that expense after the award was given to us. We kind of went back and forth about whether we could rent one, or then we wanted to go to Denver and rent a Ford Lightning that was available up there for a shorter period of time, so to purchase it. And then ultimately, we were told just go rent a regular vehicle. So it's kind of I would say that because this is a new grant, it's fairly, the rulemaking and some of the targeting of, what the implementation plans are is still somewhat flexible. But what that leads us to, I think, is what you folks that are managing NEMSIS databases is really important, is that we will be mining that data out of our local state of Colorado database for that. And the other thing that was offered up to us is to make sure that we can access the FARS data. And I know you guys don't really have the coverage on the FARS data, but and then the last thing I would tell you that was in there that was offered to us, which I think has some value to the people that are managing NEMSIS databases, is that we were, as soon as we were awarded the grant, General Motors is obviously watching who gets the grant. And we were the only fire-based organization out of 300 grants that went around. And there was, I got a call from GM's Intelligent Vehicle Design division. And as many of you know, we've theorized this whole concept of, for example, OnStar notifying a dispatch center, and then that information being transmitted to potentially an EPCR, and then that EPCR being able to be fed up to a state database, and then ultimately up to a NEMSIS database. I mean, I think that's the vision of the future, to be able to tell if somebody was belted, somebody was in a rollover, if they were ejected out of the seat, if the airbags deployed, what the energy was, and where it struck the vehicle. All those things are available to be transmitted right now. And, do those things pre-populate our EPCRs in the future? But I was also very interested in what GM's Intelligent Vehicle Design team was able to offer us in the way of data. Like, for example, they can tell me if the people that are going across US 160 are wearing a seatbelt or not. They can also tell me, if they had a significant braking event while they were driving the car. They can also tell me that, and one of the things that I was after and they're working on is how often, and many of you that have newer vehicles, you probably have that system in your car now where the car, if it drifts over the fog line, that white line on the side of the road, or drifts over the middle, the divider line in the middle, the wheel will either shake or it will notify the driver to get back into the lane. And then same thing. So I'm curious about that data because I'm also curious about drowsy drivers or distracted drivers. So as we get into writing the safety plan on this, how do we keep people from being drowsy, and how do we keep them from being distracted on the road? Those are obviously big implementation strategies or engineering strategies or strategies that we want to employ. But how often does that happen? And I think we have the ability to grab that off the intelligent vehicle design, at least on GM vehicles, on how often they drift over the road. And, and again, that may signify somebody that's tired. That may signify somebody that's texting, and so what does that look like? And how often does that occur? So they're working on that for us. And there's about 2 or 3 other things that they were able to get off their speed. And, the spooky part about it is really how amazing and what a significant amount of, I guess, metadata is being collected from your car as you drive across the road somewhere. And, one side of me tells me that's pretty frightening. And the other side tells me that there's a fantastic opportunity to mine the data and come up with some implementation strategies to make the road a lot safer. So there's some other things that we'll be looking at. For example, pedestrian safety along the roadway. We're going to be looking, there's always a lot of bikes along this section of road. What can we do to improve the road as far as it goes for bicycle safety? And a lot of the kind of cross-country races or Colorado races use this road too. So what does that look like? And so a lot of moving parts of this thing. We got about a year to write it. And then, like I said, the goal is this first 200,000 gives us the ability to produce the document, but the document will be very heavy on post-crash care, as that was our angle. And then once you get to the document being received in the planning world of NHTSA and DOT, is that then that opens up, millions of dollars more for implementation projects along that corridor. So there was a method to the madness to jump into this, which was, again, to control the narrative and try to focus it more towards EMS than enforcement or some of the other things that we've seen highway traffic safety money go to in the past. I think this is a virgin territory for EMS organizations to mine the funding for this. But there are, I think, some barriers to it. Number one is that, again, the number of technical writers that are available in the EMS world to agencies that want to go after this. I think there's a lot to be had by these large language models assisting people in doing that. And then I think the other big piece of this is that it really is amazing how many relational databases, whether it's NEMSIS or FARS or it's GM's intelligent vehicle design database that has all this information in it, and trying to collate all those things together to give you an accurate picture about what's happening on this section of road. And I think that's our challenge for the next year, is to try to sift through this data and figure out what's important, and then go into that and say, okay, these were the strategies that we think are going to work to reduce the number of fatalities and serious injuries along that road. Me personally, I'll be happy if we get a couple of sets of extrication equipment along the corridor for some of the agencies that are still using gas-powered tools. And then, man, if we can, I know Colorado is very heavily entrenched now in the whole blood program. We're hoping that the whole blood program and some of the components of the whole blood program to save trauma victims, especially in a rural setting where we know their outcomes are very poor, maybe something else that we can get after with this information. But I applaud all those folks and our great Colorado team led by Amber that does a great job of collecting our data and being able to make that data available to us and answer questions for us. We're also happy just to make Amber happy that my agency is already a 3.5 organization. We're submitting data up to her in the newest form on the NEMSIS database. So happy to answer any questions for you guys.
So if you do have a question and you'd like to put it into chat, or you'd like to raise your hand, we will keep an eye on that. And I will say there's one comment from Karen Jacobson saying, awesome work, Bruce. Looking forward to another update on your findings in the future. I did have a question for phase one. Once you found the SFFA grant, what was the time frame? Like, how long did you spend completing the application, and then how long between the submission and the award?
Yeah, so it took about 2 days to write the grant. And then I would tell you that it was more perplexing when we got the grant, got the notification that there was essentially a statement of work and a contract that had to be filled out with some additional items in it. So the award letter came fairly quickly within 30 days of the closing of the grant period. And then when you got your contract, it was there was a bunch of appendixes that had to be filled out. And that's where the large language model came into play, is that they, for example, in the contract, they want you to make sure that, how you're addressing diversity issues, how you're addressing carbon issues. And a lot of agencies, while they're very sympathetic to those issues and they're very supportive of those issues, when you get down to having to write the nitty-gritty on those things and try to make it so that it means something, that's difficult. And so doing some of those narratives can be difficult. You don't want to just cut and paste something, but having the large language models give you an outline for it, then you then go back and edit and add to your own agency's personal efforts towards these things, or what your philosophies are as your agency, specific, I think makes that easy. So I would say that probably about 4 days of time. One of them is obviously gathering the data to put in there in the letters of introduction. I would tell you that we spent probably a solid day going through highway traffic safety data that's already available from the Colorado Department of Transportation. There's some mapping that has to be done. They've already got very significant data on the number of fatalities that have occurred on certain roadways in the state of Colorado. One of the nice things about that is that they had over 10 years worth of data. However, the grant only required 5 years worth of data. So we did have to go back and mine that data, mine those maps. So those maps had to be submitted. The other thing that I think was in the grant that if you're not savvy with, tracking this stuff down, is that there is some bonus points that were coming in the grant award if you were able to hit an area that was economically disadvantaged. So you do have to get into a little bit of the economic data and see where these zones are, where the federal government has deemed them, either destitute or low income or economically disadvantaged areas. NHTSA and DOT did provide a link so you could go mine that data from the source that it was at. So they made it very easy to get in and get that done.
That's fantastic. And you didn't have an expert grant writer on this, right? When you guys picked this up, you did it in-house, and that's where the chat GPT, large language model, I learned a new term, thank you very much for that, came in handy. So, oh, I've got, hang on, there's a little bit in the chat.
Yeah, Jen, just to answer your question, my board keeps coming to me. So I'm a little agency compared to when I was in Las Vegas at a big metro fire department. So we're about $4.2 million operation. We're super rural in the big picture of things considered by Medicare. And my board keeps coming to me and said, oh, should we hire a grant writer? And again, I go back to that issue that there are very few grant writers, I think, that really truly understand EMS. And you will spend a lot of time trying to explain to them what you're doing. And grant writing, I think, is kind of an intersection of creativity and being able to have the discipline to follow what the grant is asking for. So, it's hard to inject that creativity into a consultant and give them your vision about what you see with this. So I would tell you that this grant was written by me and a couple of people on my staff that assisted with it, my IT guy. And I just think that it's worth the time to do that. I think because ultimately, if you're the agency lead and you're having to manage this grant or oversee it and supervise it, at least you know what the components are of it. And I'm happy to say we've got about $8 million in grant money that's come into our little organization. I'm processing a grant this week with a statement of work that's about $550,000 to do free EMT training until 2026. And that includes a preceptor class, a community paramedic class, and 2 IB modules. And they've given us, like I said, about $500,000 until 2026 to conduct EMT training. That's on top of the $200,000 that our SAMHSA grant had already given us through the Siren Act to do EMT training and supply our classrooms with a lot of the latest and greatest technology. And then on top of that, because the money's coming from SAMHSA and the Siren Act grants, which I think most of you are familiar with, that they also want you to do a little bit of mental health and opiate training that falls on top of that. So that's been another, nice to have out of the Siren Act grant and out of the SAMHSA grants.
I think it's great. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you found that grant money out there and gotten it and gone for it. And it just shows everyone on the call that there is some money out there for the EMS folks and fire folks also that have joined us as well. Thank you so much. Did you have any other links to share? Karin shared the SS4A. I think we have those links on the NEMSIS website, but if there is anything that gets shared later, I will make sure that it gets out to everyone on the call.
And I would say one other thing is, many of you are familiar with our NEMT efforts for, a national mentoring program. And I would say that grant writing, especially mining into the NEMSIS database. And, I mentioned to somebody the other day about, just go to the cube and look. And they're like, well, what's the cube? And I'm like, I said, you don't realize that we have all this incredible data that's being collected through this system for years. And I said, just call Salt Lake. I said, they're very good about walking you through this or helping you out with this. I had one of my employees that was doing a project for a college class that he was doing, and he wanted to know about motorcycle crashes. And I said, yeah, either call up and talk to Amber, or call up and talk to the folks in Salt Lake that can help you mine this data out of the national database. And so I would tell you that, when we start talking about these grants, and the SS4 grant had some complexity to it. I wouldn't say it was complex as the SAMHSA grants, but it was real close. And I would tell you that it's important in your organization, I think, to mentor people in grant writing. Like, for example, in the state of Colorado here, we have a very robust EMS grant system where they fund about 50% of EMS system improvements here. And that grant is a fairly easy grant to navigate. It does take a little bit of creativity to write some of the narratives in there and do the work for the bidding and the submittals that have to go in there for bids for the equipment that you're asking for. But, our state EMS office made it very simple to get through that process. And then we have another program called CREATE, which funds about 50% of EMS education for things like ACLS or paramedic school. And that's also a fairly simple grant. So in my organization, I try to start people out of writing these fairly easy grants because they're so well structured, and then kind of graduate them up to, what I would consider the major leagues in the federal grants. Because it does, I think in the future, especially with the way EMS is funded around the country, which is really atrocious, but you have to rely on grants if you want some nice to haves. Like, for example, we can get by with gas powered extrication equipment, but it would be nice to have some battery powered extrication equipment. It would be nice to have blood in our units instead of having to call the helicopter for it. So all those things I think are going to be required on grant money in the future, and training the next generation to make sure that they understand how that intersection of creativity and following the rules or the grant deliverables in the application is important. And to start them out on some of these simpler grants, I think is very, very critical.
Well, I'd just like to extend a great, huge thank you for bringing this. I think it's fantastic, and it is hopefully inspired a few people to go after a little bit of grant money that's out there. If you have any questions, we will get them to you if they come in afterwards. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. Last chance, everyone, and we'll get them to you after if any new ones come in.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody, for having me. And again, I know that all of you kind of, you're tucked away in these EMS offices and, collecting all this data. And unless you're a data nerd, you don't really appreciate what you guys do. But I would tell you, as a fire chief, I appreciate everything you guys do, because without the data, we can't make the argument to get the money. So thank you for what you do. All right, I'll see you. Thanks for having me, Jen.
Thank you so much. And Amber did say thank you, Chief Evans, or thanks, Chief Evans. So thank you. All right, so that takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is going to be Monet. She's going to talk to us about saving the date for the NEMSIS annual meeting. Monet, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, thank you. Okay, you should be able to see the NEMSIS website. Yes, no, maybe?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who has currently registered either in person or virtually for the NEMSIS annual meeting. We have some wonderful folks that will be joining us in Park City in August. And so thank you so very much for your attention to getting the registration information completed early. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let you see where you can get this information if you have not yet registered. It's the second bullet in the hero slider, and you will simply click on this picture here. It'll take you to this page. One of the things I need to mention is that we will be closing the registration on Friday, August 4th at 4 p.m. So you have approximately 8 working days to go ahead and get registered. Both portals will close. I currently have the in-person registration as well as the virtual registration in the same portal. And I will need to close both registrations at the same time. And so I plan to do that on Friday, August the 4th. So if you plan to join us, please go ahead and get registered as soon as possible. I would also like to mention that the New Park Resort, where we will be hosting the event, the group block rate will close on July 31st. That's Monday. So if you still need a room, please go ahead and make your reservation for the New Park Resort. Currently, the lowest price rooms that were at $179 have all been sold out, but they still have some suites that are available. These come with a hot tub for additional $50 more. So that would be the $229 price point. However, the group block rate will close again on 7/31. So if you could take care of that. If you need a letter to submit to your directors or anyone who would approve your travel, the letter is here on the website. This is actually how you would register for the meeting. You would go to that red button. We have the in-person meeting registration as well as the virtual registration. Again, that closure date information is here. And then here is the information for registering at the New Park Resort. Additional information, the agenda is here. The preliminary agenda is listed here to provide the information about the breakout sessions. One thing I would like to mention is the interoperability workshop for EMS software vendors. We are currently asking a few software folks who are working for software companies to approve me moving you into this interoperability workshop. There are some folks who registered but did not indicate if you would participate in this or not. So we have sent some emails. The email was sent to you by Lisa Winter at the DCC. I was copied on that email. So if you see that email, please go ahead and respond if you would like to be moved into the interoperability workshop, and we'll go ahead and revise your registration. There's nothing you would need to do other than just respond to the email. The Data Managers Forum is specifically for state data managers. The advisory board meeting will be specifically for those who are on the advisory board. And these are on the Tuesday pre-conference sessions. Then we have the Wednesday and Thursday sessions. I want to mention that the meeting, we will have much robust discussion on NEMSIS, how we move forward with NEMSIS version 351, revising just everything about revising the standard, where we are with the changes. But in the evening, we have some activities. Initially, we were going to play pickleball. However, the gym needs to repair the floor, so we have some other activities planned, such as widow ball, kickball. We have a batting cage. This participation in this event requires a activity waiver. So we would like to have you complete that waiver. Just come out and have some fun with us. A little physical activity, not too strenuous, just something fun. I need to put people into groups. And so I would like to see how many people we have, and I will have a great indication of that based on those waivers. The other event is on Thursday, which is in the evening, is we will be going to the Utah Olympic Park. There is a museum there as well as rides. And this activity also requires a activity waiver. Both waivers are listed here on the website. I will drop these into the chat. It just takes about 2 minutes, maybe 3, but we would love to have you go ahead and complete these waivers. And then I can have a better indication of how many vehicles we will need to rent to have folks transported from the venue to the Olympic Park. Here's a flyer about the interoperability workshop, so you can review this information. This interoperability workshop, we will not provide this on the virtual platform. You will need to be in person for this particular session. So again, please go ahead and get registered if you have not done so already. And then here's a few frequently asked questions and some of the responses about payment with a check or refund policies. If there's something that you have a question about, you're not really sure who to ask, you can certainly send me an email if you have my email address, or you can just simply create a submit help desk ticket, and then we will respond at our earliest convenience to any questions you have about the meeting. And I promise I will go ahead and put those links into the chat and ask if there are any questions at this time. Okay. If you have questions that come up later, please reach out and I'll be happy to respond to those questions at that time. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Look forward to seeing so many of you in a few weeks. Thanks, Jen. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Monet. She does a great job putting this together, and there's a lot of moving pieces. So the sooner you can get registered to help her get everything in order would be extremely appreciated. So the next item on the agenda is a submission issue for version 3.50 with the critical patch 4. We have found that there is an issue in the process of accepting those. So those records, if they use a new value from critical patch 4, that includes some of the pertinent negatives that were included in critical patch 4 for the e-injury 03 and 04, those records are being failed. They're being rejected by the system and sent back. We are aware of it. We are working on it. I do not, unfortunately, have an ETA for the solution, but I can tell you that it is in progress and one of the high priority items on the list. The other item to bring up is that within the cube, you may start to see some not recorded values in mandatory fields. Those are version 3.50 values that have not been added to the cube yet. So if it is a mandatory field that would normally not have a not recorded value, that's why you may see those in some areas. That is also in the IT queue to resolve. I appreciate a few folks found those items and brought them to our attention, and we're getting them fixed as soon as possible. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, raise your hand. We can unmute you, and we are happy to have a conversation about that. And as soon as I do have an ETA, I will send out an email to everyone letting them know what the timeline is, or hopefully that it is all taken care of. Some of the states with failures will need to resubmit those records. I don't see anyone's hands flying up asking to be unmuted, and nobody's typing in the chat. So I will go ahead and move to the next item, which is the tips and tricks document location. So the tips and tricks document that we've shared a couple times is now available online under the technical resources, guides and usage. Scroll on down to the other category and you can click on it. It is a PDF document, so you can download it, you can save it. I will put a link to it into the chat for everyone. There you go. That is the tips and tricks document. I do want to point out one of the nice things about this document is it gives you an idea of what the issue is, right? EPCR transmission failure. We're just kind of talking about that. Is there a validation error? Is this happening at the local, state, or national level? Do we have the right schematron in place? And so it would have helped walk down the process and get to the point where, hey, this issue isn't on our end, it's at the NEMSIS TAC level. So that is one of the nice parts about the tips and tricks document that is being provided. Missing records, like, that has become an item lately where it's been noticed that there may be records in one data repository that are not making it to another. How do we start looking for where these record submissions are failing? Are there duplicate records, inaccurate counts, errors, items like that are included on the tips and tricks document? One of the other updates that has recently taken place, John Becker is in-person attendance required this year for the annual meeting. For vendors, in-person is not required. You can do it virtual. It is encouraged that you come in person whenever possible. There may not always be a virtual option there, but there is this year. So thanks for the question, John. One of the other resources that's been provided that we have talked about is the transition timeline. And Lori let you know at the last V3 call that we were going to remove the spreadsheet, which has caused some confusion for some of the vendors and agencies out there. And we have replaced it with a new tool. I'd like to give a big shout out to Chris Hoffman, who put quite a bit of work and time into getting this set up and getting it posted for everyone. So under the version 350 revision, state transition plans, now this pulls directly from the map, and I will actually, so on this map for states, and I'm going to pick on you, Karin, at the bottom, there's a lot of information that can be included for that state's implementation. And they are allowed to add additional information down here as well that we will post. This now is directly over here on the state transition plan. And it has all of the states, one page. You can copy and paste, you can scroll. It is in alphabetical order. And one nice thing is you've got this return to the V3 map that can take you back to the map. So let's say you go in and you're looking at Arizona. Oh, okay, yeah, I need to go get that information. You can return to the V3 map and click on Arizona and go into their state, pull down the state data sets, the schematrons, look at their PDF information, check their update history on 3.5 and 3.4. The one thing I will warn everyone is when you're on the state page, you may need to change the version. So if you're looking for some 3.4 information to solve an issue that you've had, you want to look at the change log from 3.4 for some reason, something like that, you will need to make sure to change this. If a state has not transitioned over to 3.4 yet, or 3.5 yet, excuse me, only 3.4 would show on this page and you wouldn't need to change it. Are there any questions or comments or thoughts about that? And I will put in a link to the state transition plan page into the chat for everyone as well, so that they can copy and paste the link. And double checking, no hands are up. Karin said, is there any way the note you may need Adobe Acrobat Reader information can be removed from each state on that new page? I will check into that and I can ask about it. That's a great question, Karin. Thanks. Any others? And I know it's a little bit harder not being able to unmute yourself. You can thank those Zoom bombers out there for that we've had to tighten up the security, but we are happy to unmute anyone that raises their hand that has a question that they want to bring up. Lauren at Zoll did ask if states could update their dates would be good as we are nearing end of summer. And that is true. Any time for the state EMS data managers that you want to have that updated, please just send us an email to Lori, Monet, or myself. Open up an IT help desk ticket with the information, especially if you think somebody's out of the office. The help desk is always a great way to go. The more up to date those can be kept, the better. It keeps everybody on the same page. And you know, we are, and I talk about it a lot, and I know you're all probably tired of hearing me say it, but communication is the key. Those states that communicate on a regular basis with their vendors and their agencies within their state have had, their transitions are going as smooth as can be expected with any transition in the EMS data environment. So we do always encourage communication. Bridget, I can show you again really quick. So when you go to the home page, go up here to using EMS data, V350 revision, and it's here, the state transition plan. And that brings up all of the states. Any other questions? And then, of course, if you have questions or anything that you put into the chat, we will review it after the meeting if we don't get to it during the meeting. So please don't be shy. Go ahead and ask those questions. That brings us to items from the Office of EMS with Eric, who is unable to join us today. They are giving a presentation at the moment. So then I'm going to talk about the upcoming meetings really quick, because I do want to point out that the August 23rd meeting is canceled. Everyone will be participating in the annual meeting. All vendors are required to be there. So as long as you are in the attendance, you will get credit for that meeting. And then there will be no training next month due to the annual meeting as well. So there will be no August training announcement. That brings us to open forum. Again, if you have something you would like to bring up, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. And I'll give it just a minute. This is a new process for everyone. We try to have this be a conversation, a back and forth, and the new security makes that a little bit harder. All right, thanks everyone for taking time out of your day. We will go ahead and give you a little bit of time back. You are welcome. Have a fantastic day. Stay cool. Everyone, please be careful out there in the heat. Have a great day.